Hey guys, it's Foster from SubiSpeed, and today we have our bone stock 2022 WRX with us at Paragon Performance, and we're gonna get this thing on their dyno to find out what type of power this car makes in stock form. Then after that, we're gonna go to our shop, add some modifications, and come back here so we can have a comparison and a reference for if the mods we did to the car actually make any power. So now you guys know what we're doing. Let's get this thing strapped down and see how it does. All right, Alex, how much do you think the WRX is gonna make today?
About 250 horse, 240 foot-pounds of torque.
All right, Peter, what's your guess? How much power is the WRX gonna make today?
69 horsepower.
69. What about torque?
420.
All right.
If you want a serious answer.
Seems like a weird guess, but we'll go with that. All right, Kevin, what's your guess for how the WRX makes power today?
I'm gonna say it's gonna make 245 horsepower and let's say 260 wheel torque.
All right, Corbin, our photographer here, you got to take a guess.
I'm gonna say 250 horsepower and 230 torque.
There you go. Now, Graham should have an advantage here in this game, but
but I forgot to look.
You got to give us your guess, Graham.
I forgot to look. I've seen what they make, but I think man, what was it? I think they make about 250 horsepower, and I think the torque is in the 240 range, pretty flat from what I remember seeing. So we should be pretty close to that. So the ones I've seen were on dyno jets, and dyno jets are all pretty consistent with each other. So.
All right, kind of right in the middle. All right, Mirza, you got to give us your guess.
All right, I'm going 260 for power and 245 for torque.
Oh, coming in a little high. He's got confidence in the new WRX. All right, so I kind of cheated because I watched some other YouTube videos of the new WRX on the dyno, but I'm gonna go ahead and guess 240 horsepower and 240 foot-pounds of torque. If it makes more, that would be awesome though. So this is our tuner Graham, and we did about 3 pulls with the 91 octane in the WRX, and we saw some funky stuff going on the dyno graph here. So I want to have Graham talk a little bit about what's going on.
Sure. So we can't tune these yet, of course, hopefully soon, but for the meantime, we can actually log some pretty useful data. I can't really see what it's doing with knock, but I can see the ignition timing curve and kind of get an idea if it's pulling timing out somewhere. So what I'm noticing, our red run was the first one there. It actually kind of pulled back a little bit right on that very first run for some reason, kind of pulled the boost down a little bit is what I saw, but it was a pretty flat power curve. Then my next run, you know, what I saw was that this dip right here that basically exists just before 5,000 RPM. What I can see from the log is that it keeps pulling timing in that area, so it's probably not very happy with 91, which is not surprising at all with how they tune these cars. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna put some ethanol in it, and that's gonna help, you know, clean it up as far as, you know, knock control goes, and perhaps kind of change the fueling. I'd say that made a big difference. We just picked up almost 30 horsepower. I drove it enough to make sure it was mixing, kind of watched the fuel trims. Once I saw that we had the ethanol getting up to the front, I reset the ECU to kind of put it back, make sure if it had any kind of learned, ignition retard or anything like that, we would try to clear that out. From what I can tell on the ignition curve, I don't think we had any knock that time. And up at the top where it goes into open loop, it still does that, but instead of running so rich, because we put the ethanol in it, we kind of artificially leaned it out. But we leaned it out to a point where, with some ethanol in there and direct injection, it's still a pretty safe AFR, but it certainly makes a lot more power, as you can see on the graph. Full disclosure, don't go and automatically put ethanol in your car that's not flex fuel. This is something that we're doing for testing purposes. We can't recommend doing this at home on a factory vehicle because you never know what the outcome is going to be or the perfect blending. But that said, the reason why we can get away with this is because majority of the time, idle driving crews and even up to about 5,000 RPM of full throttle, this car is in full-time closed loop fuel control, which means that it uses the O2 sensor to target a air-fuel ratio and it adjusts the fueling on the fly. Ethanol requires more fuel, so when we put the extra ethanol in it, the ECU is able to compensate by adding more injector time, basically.
All right, so real quick, I want to hear your thoughts on the FA24 What do you think about the new motor and its potential?
Well, it seems pretty promising. I mean, this is certainly some pretty impressive horsepower in stock form. Putting the ethanol in there to clean up the knock and then just seeing what it can make on pretty low boost gives me some hope that, we can do something with this engine. One of my complaints is that they put the factory rev limit at 6,000 RPM. I don't know why. It seems like it would want to continue making some power above that, so hopefully we can extend that, we can play with it, and we can, see some better RPM range out of it. But I'm very interested to see what these can do. I think we can probably add some more boost to it for sure. Let it breathe a bit better with intake and exhaust, and then use more ethanol and get some nice power out of them.
So what do you think about the limitations of the stock turbo? I noticed it was only hitting about 13 PSI of peak boost. Do you think there's more room there?
It certainly seems like it. I think Subaru really likes to keep their cars in this power range right here. They really like that 300 horsepower, engine rating, which translates to somewhere in the 240, 250 range. They really like to keep their cars there. So I think what they did the bigger engine and they dropped the boost down big time, but they didn't use a smaller turbo. The turbo doesn't come in, outrageously early or anything. So I think we've got quite a bit of room to add some boost to this.
That's awesome. So yeah, we're gonna get some mods on our car and we're gonna come back to Graham and we're gonna see what we can do down the road to make some more power. All right, before we leave Paragon Performance, we're gonna get the WRX on the scales to see how much it weighs. Right now, it has exactly a half a tank of gas, and I know from what I've read online, it's not supposed to be much heavier than the previous generation, but let's go ahead and see for ourselves. Okay, so the scale doesn't lie, it's 3263, and according to the internet, it's supposed to be 3297. That's probably with a full tank of gas, so I'd say this is within the range of what you can expect. This is a base model, so it's not gonna be fully loaded and as heavy as the CVT or some of the premium trims. So if you want the lightest WRX, the base model is definitely gonna be the way to go. So we're back at the shop and I wanted to quickly go over the dyno session and give you guys some thoughts about the numbers. So our car made 273 wheel horsepower and 262 foot-pounds of torque. Now, if you compare that to the previous gen, the V8 chassis, Road and Track had one that made 268 horsepower and 258 foot-pounds of torque. Now, of course, this is not a true apples to apples comparison. They're different dynos, different day, different weather, and of course, we probably use some different fuel by sticking some E85 in ours. But all said and done, I was very impressed with how this car made power on the dyno, and the dyno numbers don't show everything. There's a part of the usable power band that is gonna be greatly improved over that 2-liter with this new 2.4, and you're not gonna see that with peak numbers from a dyno. I was really impressed with how this car did, and I'm really excited to see what it can do in the future once we modify it. Obviously, since we're SubiSpeed, we're gonna be adding some parts to our car to give it a little bit more performance. So the plan is we're gonna add some bolt-on parts that don't require a tune, and then we're gonna go back to Paragon Performance to see how this car makes power and if we picked up any easy performance gains. Once Cobb or similar companies come out with tuning options, we're gonna go even more crazy with our build, and we're gonna see what we can really extract out of this motor in stock form without being opened up and fully built. So that's the plan for our WRX. If you guys like this new WRX content, give this video a like and hit that subscribe button so we can keep making more of this. All right, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you later.